حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة ونصح الأمة وجاهد في الله حتى أتاه اليقين. أما بعد، فيقول الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. O ye who believe, fear Allah the right fear and do not die except in the state of Islam. Dear elders, brothers and sisters, it is very important for us as we look at our own lives and the event around us to reflect on the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and learn from it, so we may gain the understanding of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. And the other thing also, we understand the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon us. We understand the behavior that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept. It will correct some of the things that became standards, because in different times things change. And we will talk about these things, so we can get the protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so we may seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the way He wants, and so we may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our deeds because they align to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. And today we will talk about the story of Qarun, which is in Surah Al-Qasas. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through the story of Qarun, wants to teach us many things. And the first of one is Qarun was the people of Musa alayhi salam. This means he lived during the time of Musa alayhi salam. Yet he did not benefit any of the teachings of Musa alayhi salam, because he was arrogant in his understanding toward what he needs to do. Meaning he wants to define the rules, not listen to them. He wanted to make sure that he knows them and he acts upon what he believes is true, not what Musa taught him. And this is a lesson for all of us. It is not what we think or wish or project, is but what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us, and what the Quran taught us, and what Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam also taught us. He said, Inna Qaruna kana min qawmi Musa fabagha alayhim. He oppressed them. He oppressed them. The first act of aggression is oppression. If you look and we come back to the people of Palestine and we come back to the people of Gaza, we see how these people are being oppressed. Because Israel believes it has the right to dictate to the people how they live. When they can eat, when can they drink, and how they live. And this is against the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Oppression, no matter what. Qarun was oppressing the people. And if you keep watching the horrific images coming out of Gaza, you will see in one instance that these snipers start killing sheep. Sheep. Animals. That did not hurt anybody. Did not do anything. But that oppression, that supremacy belief that we can dictate to the people how they live, what kind of animals they have. And we kill the animals at the point of choice. regardless if it's right or wrong. And it is horrific as a human being to see the human being go to this level. And surely he's a corrupt from the inside. And his life will be corrupt. And he will never find a moment of happiness. Because surely not a human being will do such an act toward an animal that is domesticated. It's a goat. So, we'll go back to the story of Qarun. He said, فَبَغَى عَلَيْهِمْ. Number one, he oppressed them. Number two, people believe that richness is something that is, we should give it a worth, give it a value. This means when you have money, and sad to say that you have a value because of that wealth. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, وَآتَيْنَاهُ مِنَ الْكُنُوزِ. Number one, Allah is the one that gives. Being a poor or rich, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that gives. And your rizq is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dictate to us. We have to run toward it, of course, we have to work for it, but it's dictated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So your richness or your poorness is not because you're not doing, or it should not give you a status that you can belong to, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talked about Qarun. He said, وَآتَيْنَاهُ مِنَ الْكُنُوزِ مَا إِن مَفَاتِحُهُ لِتَنُوءَ مِنْهُ بِالْعُصْبَةِ أُولِي الْقُوَّةِ إِذْ قَالَ لَهُ قَوْمًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, describing the wealth, that they're saying that even his safe needs 7 people to carry the key to open the safe, just the size of the wealth that Qarun has. And in another story, it used to take about 60 mules to carry that wealth from one side to the other. إِذْ قَالَ لَهُ قَوْمُهُ لَا تَفْرَحْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْفَرِحِينَ. His people told him, do not be arrogant. Do not see yourself above all these people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do not like the people, the farihin. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do not like the people to see themselves above others. Even if it with wealth that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you. It is something very important, brothers and sisters, because the wealth, and it is attributed, the attribution of wealth towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is being erased, especially for people of us that live in non-Muslim countries, and even in the Muslim countries. Because I remember when I was a kid, when I used to go and see the buildings, the people that build the buildings, and the people that have the wealth to build it, always write on it on the front of the building, Al-Mulku Lillah, La ilaha illallah. Al-Mulku Lillah, meaning the ownership of this building is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not my building. It's not my masjid. So you can put your name on it. It's not my anything. Because we have to remember, brothers and sisters, that we came to this dunya with zero value. We had to have somebody to clothe us, somebody to put a diaper on us, and somebody to feed us. And when we die, that value goes back to zero. Was somebody washing us, somebody putting a piece of cloth on us, and somebody put us under the ground. So net is zero at the beginning, zero at the end. No matter how much you go up and down, you're going to end up the same result. Because wealth is Allah. Whatever you gain of that is what Allah gives you. So we need to seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that. And then, those who believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَابْتَغِي فِي مَا آتَاكَ اللَّهُ الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةِ. And seek in what Allah gives you الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةِ. Seek the life to come by means of what God has granted you. Do not neglect your rightful share in this world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا وَأَحْسِنْ كَمَا أَحْسَنَ اللَّهُ إِلَيْكَ. And do good as Allah has done for you. So brothers and sisters, no matter if we have $10 or 10 million or 10 billion, each one of us is asked to do within his means. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to be muhsin, wants you to be the kind soul that seeks not to put everything to himself, but to share that with the people that are less fortunate than him. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell us the biggest mistake that Qarun and the people of Qarun and any of human being that will say that will come to that definition of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. قال إنما أوتيته على علم عندي. I collected my wealth because of my intelligence, because of my PhD, because of my smartness, because of my wit as a businessman. This is the first mistake that Qarun did, and we will do if we believe in that. Because Allah is the sustainer, Allah is the provider. Our risk is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and is given to us. We have to run to it, of course, but is not given based on our intelligence. It's not given based on where we're going to end up on the day of judgment. And it's not given based on the status of where we'll end up being when we go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. قال إنما أوتيته على علم عندي أولم يعلم أن الله قد أهلك من قبله من القرون من هو أشد منه قوة وأكثر جمعا. Doesn't he know, Allah talking about Qarun, that Allah destroyed for him throughout this century the people that were richer than him and stronger than him? Allah is responding. وَلَا يُسْأَلُ عَنْ ذُنُوبِهِمُ الْمُجْرِمُونَ. And the guilty will not be questioned about their sins. What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, not to attribute the wealth to our who we are, but to his mercy, and seek the mercy from him. And it is important to attribute the wealth to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and never attribute it to our thinking. And know that there are people that were richer than us that pass away, and we will pass away. And I believe the richest man that ever existed on earth was Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was worth about $750 billion to almost $1 trillion. And where is Steve Jobs today? And who has the wealth? The story is clear. And then because of his might, in terms of his belief or disbelief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, فَخَرَجَ عَلَىٰ قَوْمِهِ فِي زِينَتِهِ. He went among his people in all his pomp, meaning showing guards, cars, caravan. This is Qarun coming. Step aside. Qarun believed that he owing that status because of who he is. The people of Israel believe that they can do whatever they want to Gaza. They don't know that they are the oppressors. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala defined them as such because they want to dictate for others based on their own status how they want to live. So Qarun came out with all his might on that day. قال الذين يريدون الحياة الدنيا يا ليت لنا مثل ما أوتي قارون إنه لذو حظ عظيم. It's a very good example in the Quran. For us when we're looking at the wealthy, on the famous, and the one that Allah gave them in dunya, whatever they gave them. Allah described about Qarun. He said, he went out among his people in all his pomp. And those who aim was the life of this world said, if only we had given something like what Qarun has given. He's really a very fortunate man. Think about it. And especially in the days of influencers, especially for our young folks. You cannot start going astray by wishing to be an influencer so you can get millions in your pocket. You're forgetting about the purpose of you as a human being to deliver value to humanity. And if you make wealth because Allah decreed that for you, then it is. But when you make, this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you make your goal the wealth, for no reason except wealth, because this is how we see in life is going. This is how we see in everybody else. I want a bigger car, bigger home so I can show off. It doesn't mean we'll all do that. Allah is saying the people that love dunya wanted to be like Qarun, wanted to be that they have they have these motorcades, they want everything, not because they just want it. وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمِ, and those who knew what is right by Allah, they knew because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught them. They listened to Musa, they understood the message, they understood what Allah, they understood the rizq. He said, وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا وَيْلَكُمْ ثَوَابُ اللَّهِ خَيْرٌ لِمَنْ آمَنَ وَعَمَلَ صَالِحًا. He said, oh ye to you, wishing to be like him. Thawabullah, the reward of Allah is better for you through your good deeds. وَلَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا الصَّابِرُونَ. And we talked about sabr. And it is not given except for those people that are patient. 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 It could be in many facets. Look at the people of Gaza and look at the people of Palestine. So we can learn a little bit of that patience that we need to have on whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent through our ways. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deliver the outcome to Qarun. فَخَسَفْنَا بِهِ وَبِدَارِهِ الْأَرْضِ. He said, we caused the earth to swallow him in his home. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like an earthquake while he's walking with all might. He had no one to help him against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nor he could defend himself. All that wealth did not mean anything. All the fame, all the disbelief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not yield any result. All the strength, all the power, all the gods did not yield because Allah declared at that time that the earth will swallow Qarun. And then listen to this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continued to tell us about the people that wish to have what Qarun had. He said, وَأَصْبَحَ الَّذِينَ تَمَنَّوْا مَكَانَهُ بِالْأَمْسِ يَقُولُونَ وَيَكَأَنَّ اللَّهَ يَبْسُطُ الرِّزْقَ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ. Now they come back, said, oh, Allah will give rizq to whoever He wishes from His slaves. وَيَقْدِرْ, and He will distance. لَوْ أَنَّ مَنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَيْنَا. If Allah chooses to, He would have caused this earth to swallow us too. Indeed, those who deny the truth will never prosper. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, لَخَسَفَ بِنَا وَيَكَأَنَّهُ لَا يَفْلِحُ الْكَافِرُونَ. So, it is important for us to reflect on the of the story of Qarun alayhi salam and see ourselves and our kids and our wives and our communities and our homes. See the value of money in its true terms. And not to be oppressors in this dunya, no matter how high we get. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator. Astaghfirullah li wa lakum wa lisa'il muslimin. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidina Mursaleen. Dear elders, sisters and brothers, the story of Qarun is extremely important for us. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of story because sometimes we are humans and we take life for granted, knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decrees to us how it's going to flow. So last week, we had a young man that's 22 years old. College, last semester in his college, last semester in his university, and it was his last day. We took that young man, we washed him, and we took him to the graveyard. His family could not stand even to watch their son because of the shock. And we went to the graveyard, and not to say that these people are not patient. just to give us example how important it is us to reflect on ourselves and our kids and our life, and making sure that when we're reading the surah of Qarun or the story of him, we're really reflecting of how to really understand that how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decrees of him. May Allah grant this family the patience. Brothers and sisters, the mom could not even walk. She has to be carried all the way throughout the procession of that burial. What I'm trying to say is, these people are patient. These people are observant to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and will not pass in judgment on anyone. All what I'm just saying is Allah decrees the way the life goes for us. And the more we intune ourselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more we intune ourselves to the Quran and reflect on these stories, the more we'll be able to handle, the more we'll be able suited to understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to reflect on these stories, to make sure that we correct our understanding, because dunya is changing very fast. Money, fame, status is becoming very, very high. And everybody is fixated on that. Even my son tells me sometimes, I want to be a millionaire. I said, don't even think about that. It's not bad to be a millionaire, but why? And what if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not agree even with whatever you do, that rizq does not get to that? Then what do you do with your life? What we need to do and teach our kids is to fulfill the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are the slaves of Allah. We're here to worship Him. And focus on the good deeds. Focus on being good citizens. Because if we make an invention that benefit a human being, you will have the reward for it all the way throughout your life. I'm not saying to sit in a corner and do anything. I'm just saying change the mindset of what your life is for and what you are trying to do. Because Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, whoever plants a tree that has the fruitful tree, that every bird, every human being that will eat from it, you will get reward from it. It's just we're not saying not to work, but focus on what you're working on and what you're working on and how this is going to benefit you in the hereafter. Brothers and sisters, will end with this because Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told us, al-hayatu dunya min al-akhirah. If we're going to give you a real example that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, al-hayatu dunya, this dunya from the akhirah is like you're standing in front of ocean and you put your finger in it and you pull it out. The ocean is the akhirah. What comes out of your finger is hayatu dunya. A drop that's going to go back to the ocean. So it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't really have any value to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we need to readjust our thinking, align to that, and see and seek the support of those that are less fortunate than us, except the people of Palestine. إني داعٍ فأمنوا. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salam ala Sayyidina Musallim. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us towards best. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us see the truth. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide our hearts. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide our kids, our wives, our communities, our ummah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salam wa salam. Allahumma hadina fi man hadayt, wa afina fi man afayt, wa tawallana fi man tawallayt, wa barik lana fi ma a'tayt, wa qina sharra ma qadayt. فإنك تقضي ولا يقضى عليك ولا يذل ما وليت ولا يعز من عديت تباركت ربنا وتعالى. وربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. اللهم إن أهلنا في غزة قد مسهم الضر وأنت أرحم الراحمين. اللهم إن أهلنا في غزة قد مسهم الضر وأنت أرحم الراحمين. اللهم إن أهلنا في غزة قد مسهم الضر وأنت أرحم الراحمين. اللهم إن أهلنا في فلسطين قد مسهم الضر وأنت أرحم الراحمين. اللهم إنهم لما أنزلت إليهم من خير فقراء. اللهم إن لما أنزلت إليهم من خير فقراء. اللهم إن لما أنزلت إليهم من خير فقراء. اللهم إنا نسألك باسمك الأعظم الذي إذا ما سئلت به أجبت ألا تدع لهم ذنبا إلا غفرته ولا هما إلا جليته ولا كربا إلا نفذته ولا ميتا إلا رحمته ولا شهيدا إلا تقبلته ولا عاريا إلا كسيته ولا جائعا إلا أطعمته ولا مسكينا إلا آويته يا رب العالمين. اللهم عليك بعدوك وعدوهم يا رب العالمين. اللهم أحصهم عددا ولا تذر منهم أحدا. اللهم من أراد بالإسلام والمسلمين خيرا فوفقه لكل خير، ومن أراد بالإسلام والمسلمين شرا فخذه أخذ عزيز مقتدر. اللهم إنا نجعلك في نحورهم ونستعيذ بك من شرورهم يا رب العالمين. وربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عن آبائنا وأمهاتنا وأولادنا وأزواجنا يا رب العالمين وذريتنا يا الله. اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عن المؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات من شهد لك بالوحدانية ولنبيك بالرسالة يا رب العالمين. اللهم ارحمنا بالقرآن العظيم واجعله لنا إماما ونورا. اللهم ذكرنا منه ما نسينا وفهمنا منه ما جهلنا وارزقنا تلاوته آناء الليل وأطراف النهار. اللهم ارحمنا فوق الأرض وارحمنا تحت الأرض وارحمنا يوم العرض. اللهم واجعل أحسن أعمالنا خواتيمها وخير أيامنا يوم لقائك. ربنا آتنا كتابنا باليمين، وربنا ثبتنا على الصراط، ربنا يسر حسابنا، ربنا ارزقنا شربة من حوض نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم لا نظمأ بعده أبدا. اللهم يسر حسابنا، اللهم ظلنا بظل عرشك يوم لا ظل إلا ظلك. اللهم ثبتنا على الصراط. اللهم ارزقنا الفردوس الأعلى، اللهم ارزقنا الفردوس الأعلى. اللهم اجمعنا بأحبائنا وأهلينا وأنبيائنا وشهدائنا والمؤمنين والصديقين يا رب العالمين في الفردوس الأعلى يا رب العالمين. اللهم لا تجعل الدنيا أكبر همنا ولا مبلغ علمنا وإلى الجنة مآلنا يا رب العالمين. اللهم ثبت قلوبنا على ديننا يا مقلب القلوب. اللهم لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه، وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم حبب إلينا الإيمان وزينه في قلوبنا، وكره إلينا الكفر والفسوق والعصيان. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات. اللهم ارحم المسلمين الضعفاء في مشارق الأرض ومغاربها يا رب العالمين. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. وأقيموا الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
Please make the straight line come back to the heel and the line come closer together, inshallah. Allahu Akbar. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. وبشر الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات أن لهم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار كلما رزقوا منها من ثمرة رزقا قالوا هذا الذي رزقنا من قبل وأتوا به متشابها ولهم فيها أزواج مطهرة وهم فيها خالدون. الله. سمع الله. الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا عنك وزرك الذي أنقض ظهرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإن مع العسر يسرا إن مع العسر يسرا فإذا رغبت فانصب وإلى ربك فارغب. الله سمع الله حمدا. الله 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 السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.